Hi, my name is Tiana. I'm from Mind Body Movement Center. I'm a physical therapist and a yoga therapist. And my specialty or my real passion is working with people in pain and helping them to shift the awareness of the pain, to shift their experience of the pain so that even though you might still experience discomfort, it does not have to overcome you. It does not have to create suffering. So that is where my intention lies in helping and working with people, no matter what stage of pain that they're in, whether it's something acute that's happening or post-surgery or something that's been going on for a really long time. So today I just want to start with a little breath practice. Being a yoga therapist, I usually like to start with that kind of centering. And then I'll go into a short talk about how some five things that you can start to do to help shift that pain experience. And we'll finish with a final practice. So let's begin. So find a comfortable spot, a space, with your feet on the ground. Or you could be in a sitting position on like a meditation pillow or something where you're just sitting more upright. I want your back to be relatively up, erect, but not, so you don't want to be leaning too far back in your chair. If you want some support behind you, please have a pillow. All right, and just settling in, allowing the eyes to be open or closed, your choice, whatever helps you to tune in and to tune out to the distractions. Beginning to settle in, and I'm just going to have you take a quick scan of the body, kind of scanning through and just noticing if you're just noticing any sensations. I normally pick up on the most uncomfortable ones. It's kind of the human nature. But just without stories or judgments, you're just noticing, left foot, something in the right hip, something in the right shoulder. Just pass through. Don't track any stories about what that means. Give you just a moment. All right. And now either keeping the eyes closed or again, that steady gaze, open eyes about maybe 3 feet in front of you or so. And just start to first just feel the presence of your feet. So the sensations of maybe the big toe and the little toe and the heel. And traveling up the legs to the sensation that you can feel in the backs of the thighs with whatever you might be sitting on. To the sensations of the sit bones, those little bones that you're resting on. And just noticing if one feels higher or lower than the other. Do you feel more pressure? And if you do, what do you have to do to find that centered, balanced space? You might have to shift side to side or forward and back. And from there, we get a sense of kind of lengthening the spine from that grounded space of your feet to your sit bones, as though your spine and the spaces between each vertebrae could just get a little bit more length and space between them. All the way through the back of the neck, the crown of the head rising, and then the chin just resting in ever so gently. And while you're there, if you feel like you've gotten rigid or stiff, just soften a little bit. You can still be tall and upright without being tense and rigid. Now turning your awareness to perhaps the sounds outside of your space without seeking or straining, just if it's there, there, and if it's not, it's not. Begin to turn that awareness to the sounds inside of your space. Maybe the sound of your breath or the absence of the sound of your breath. Sensation of the air flowing in and out the tips of the nostrils. As you breathe in, Just notice if you're getting equal air through both nasal passages. No stories, no judgments. Feel the temperature as it hits the back of the throat. And then sense the air moving from that space all the way back out to your upper lip. Okay. Letting go of that awareness. And we begin a breath practice now, silently counting to yourself on the way in. As you breathe in, we're going to count to 6, and on the way out, also 6. I'll take you through the first round, and then you can count on your own. If 6 feels like too much, it's straining at the top, and you feel like you're gasping at the bottom, just carve it down to 5 or maybe 4. It shouldn't, there is a little bit of research behind the 6 breath count, but don't let that be a barrier. I want you to feel smooth and comfortable. And it's more of a belly-centric breath. Let the chest be soft. So it shouldn't be a lifting of the chest, but a slight expansion of the belly as you breathe in. All right, here we go. Breathing out completely. Next time you breathe in, I'll count for us the first time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Breathing out 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good. Continue just like that. We'll do 3 more rounds. With your next exhale, just let go of that rhythm. Return to whatever feels comfortable. And then the last thing before we exit out of this practice is to just take that brief body scan and just notice if any of your sensations have shifted. So you kind of took note of all those spots in your body that you were presently aware of. And just notice, are they there? Are they heightened? Are they gone? I know my little area that I was feeling, my left neck area, is less, and I wasn't really doing, well, I was doing a little bit of the practice with you, but yeah, anyhow, just to notice. And you might feel a heightened sense, and that's okay. We're just exploring. We're just trying to figure out what, what works for our body, our nervous system, to help decrease the sensitivity of it. So, one breath practice for one person might work, another might work for somebody else better. It's got to be your practice, and that's why trying different things and staying with some kind of practice for a while, like a couple months, is helpful, because then your nervous system starts to train that, and you get more used to it, and it becomes more nourishing to the system, and so the sensitivity levels drop, and we'll talk about that as we go into the talk now. All right, so let me just share my screen. Okay, here we go. So you already know a little bit about me, and we're gonna head right in. All right, so we know sometimes the faces of pain can be very obvious, right? There's anguish and scared and dismay, and sometimes this is what's going on inside of you, but people don't always see it. And this can be a really frustrating part of it, is because no one understands what you're going through. They can't feel what you're feeling. You might look very highly functional and like, oh, she's doing, or he's doing that, or, they can't possibly be in pain, and you are most definitely in pain. And it comes down to sometimes, your doctors don't really know how to work with you either. They don't believe what you're saying. They think you're making things up, but trust me, whatever you're feeling, And people might say that it's in your brain or your thoughts or psychosomatic. And I will tell you, and we'll go through this, that pain is in the brain for sure, but whatever you're feeling is what you're feeling. And it's very complex and it's multifaceted. So even though the doctors don't know what's going on with you or they think you're making it up, well, they can think what they think, but you know what's going on with you, okay? And I know that can be the frustrating part of it, but so let's go into what actually pain is. Pain is a multi-system output, motivates us and assists us as individuals to get out of that situation. Whatever that situation is that the brain is perceiving to be a threat to the tissues of the body. So something that people often confuse pain with is that it's an input, like, oh, I cut myself here, I poke myself here and it hurts. But by the time that signal, I'm poking myself, that signal has gone to, through the peripheral system to my spinal cord, up to my brain, all different areas of the brain to make sense of this. Like, have you been poked there before? What does that mean? I felt this before, but I'm not sure, maybe was there some bad memory with it, or no, you know what, back down. That's just myself. That's just Tiana poking me in the arm. Now, if you had actually had a cut there or broke your arm or something, you might have a completely different response to just that little bit of pressure, because your nervous system is primed and making different decisions about it based on some perceived sense of danger. So it doesn't actually need to be dangerous, something that's going on, or a physical insult or a cut or bruise or anything, to feel like a danger to the nervous system. I want to just make that clear. And as we go on, hopefully that will become a little bit more clear. So a simple definition of pain is that it's an alarm system. It can warn you when you have been injured. It can also warn you when your body thinks it's going to be injured, or there might be potential injury. So I like to think of to not be afraid of our pain alarm system, because sometimes it's giving us correct information and it's warning us, it's telling us to change positions, it's telling us to get out of a situation. And sometimes it can become faulty and be a little bit hypersensitized, and we'll go into that in a moment. So there have been times in my my pain pathway, my pain experience, when I can think about the situation when my pain first started, which was at basically a desk job doing processing paperwork and waybills for a biotech company. So lots of computer input and keying and order entry and phone work and typing. We had typewriters back then to type the waybills out. So just a lot, and a lot of stress, and just my body didn't know how to deal with the stress, and I didn't know how to deal with the stress. But I can think back to those moments, like just being in that workstation, imagining working at my computer station. I can feel it right now, it's starting to build, but I can feel those sensations starting to repeat and resurface. Even though I'm not in that situation, my tissues are so different than they were then. But my alarm system is triggering, like, you are in danger, just because I'm thinking it, just because the thought is there. So this is how complex and how tricky and how beautiful the nervous system is, and how powerful it is. And we can use it to our good. Okay, so complex path is very complex, this whole nervous system. This is kind of a simplistic view of this. So here's the first initial. You hear something. What's that? There's some response. The muscles of the ear, shift so they can hear something. The internal ear structures shift and move around so that they can hear something. There's neural inputs that are coming in through the hair cells, and that gets translated up through the brain. And that's passed on from one nerve cell to the next nerve cell through a bunch of different processes that go on right through here. neurotransmitters that are released, and that goes up to a central part of the brain where we have our hearing ability. So parts of the brain that process sound. And so now that processing happens, all the little parts that kind of put that together, even through your memory centers, your hippocampus, that say, I've heard that sound before, I know what that is. And that travels back down through the nervous system, back out through muscular fibers, which turn the muscles of the arm on and our body to process that and go, oh, that's the phone. I need to pick it up and answer it. So it, internal ear to the brain and back out to the arm to go, I need to pick that up. So simplistic view of that, of what's going on. So now imagine, again, we're going to talk about some of this as we go on, but imagine that instead of hearing the phone ring, that now you're hearing your doctor say something about your MRI. There's all this damage in there, herniated discs, et cetera, et cetera. So now you're hearing that, and now there's this same signal processing that's going on up to the brain to make all of this recognition, and then there's going to be some output into it, like maybe you shut off, you stop listening. I've heard this a lot, like patients will come in like, I kind of don't remember what they said, I just kind of stopped listening when I heard, the results of the MRI. And so now this maybe it's a vision of the MRI. So they've told you what it means, they've showed you it, and now you've got this visual as well as the auditory of the doctor. And now that is this new imprint in your nervous system about your pain. So now every time you feel your back pain, your brain is automatically going to that image of the MRI and the doctor's words about what it all means. And now you've got this imprint now that ties those two together, telling you that you're damaged and you're broken, and that is why there's all of this pain. But we know that tissue damage does not always correlate with the amount of pain that we're feeling. Where we feel the pain doesn't have anything to do oftentimes with where the tissue damage is, if there is. And we know that anything we hear, see, taste, touch has an effect on how we're going to process the sensations that we feel in our body. So amazingly complex, and we can use that information to our benefit. So it does not have to be this repeat hamster wheel of I'm broken, this is what the MRI said, the doctor said he can't help me, or I need surgery. We know that it does not have to stay in that state. We can reverse it by imprinting new information in, healthy, healing, nourishing movement, breath, and awareness about our environment and our bodies to help shift this whole pathway back so that it's not so sensitive. All right. Okay, so let's talk about just the process of these receptors in the skin and the tissues and how that kind of transmits and what that all means. So we have peripheral sensory neurons called nociceptors within the tissues, within the nerves, within, these are the periphery, right? The outer arms, the outer body, not centrally, like not always within our internal tissues. They don't always give us accurate information, the internal stuff, though it can. Like think about a torn ligament or an abdominal tear or hernia or something like that. Those we will get, pressure signals, temperature signals, injury-related chemical signals. But again, the word here that I want to hone in on is potentially damaging stimuli at the skin. Potentially doesn't always mean that has to be the case. And we'll talk about some cases when that might present. So these nociceptors will detect pressure. Like if I squeeze my arm long enough and tight enough, it's eventually not going to be very comfortable, and there might actually be some tissue damage, like a bruise underneath. So your sensory perceptions, your nociceptors, are detecting this pressure, and there has to be enough pressure for there to actually be a response, up to the brain and back out, and that says, wow, that's uncomfortable. I could press a little bit, and that pressure is not going to be enough. But that's going to change for everybody. Now, if you've had some kind of injury or insult to your left arm, now sometimes just a little bit of pressure is too much. We call that allodynia. So some sensation or some occurrence that wouldn't normally be uncomfortable now becomes a little bit more uncomfortable. So people talk about the sheets being just, the sheets on my skin is just too much. It's sensitive. I've had that with clothes on my skin when my arms are really in their really extensive pain state when I first had chronic pain. And sometimes I'll get those sensations still if I have a flare up, very, very rarely, but the skin just feels sensitive. And, or blowing air on it, or the temperature, like cold, can feel really, really uncomfortable sometimes when you have persistent pain. So those variances of temperature. Your nociceptors also have, they detect temperature. So, right, if you touch something hot, to pull away. And that's kind of that sensory, like, feel it, goes up the nervous system, like, thank goodness it happens quickly, and to pull away before there's any maybe tissue damage, or maybe you scalded your fingers a little bit. So they feel temperature, and these are all things that help keep us protected, right? We don't want to have our ankle compressed under a heavy object for too long. And so your body recognizes that and tells you to get out of that situation. And the same with temperature. You don't want to put your hand in scalding water for too long. It's a signal that's very helpful, right? This alarm system. Your nociceptors are also determining or sensing injury-related chemicals. And these can be external and also internal. So externally, like if you put something caustic on your skin, like bleach or something very toxic, it's your skin and your nociceptors pick up on that. There's also these inflammatory components and molecules that come into an area once you cut yourself, and those are also caustic to the nerve endings. The nociceptors sense that and go, ooh, this is painful. And that's part of the whole pain process. If you didn't have that happening, you might not feel that sensation and then know that something's wrong. And so you're getting all of these signals in that, again, keyword, potentially could be damaging stimuli. Now, some people talk about, I have a really high pain tolerance, and I hear that all the time. And so it might be that those folks have, maybe their nociceptors are just at a little bit more of a less sensitive state, whereas some of us, we feel things a lot more. And I know we get the question about, like, why am I feeling pain more than other people are feeling pain? And it might be possibly down to some of this, that your nociceptors are just a little bit more sensitive than others for a myriad of reasons. So I've gone on ad nauseum about that. Let's move along. So now there are these modulating neurotransmitters that help us modify some of these danger signals that are going up. So say you have that, you have the sensations of something noxious here, either pressure or temperature, and that travels up, and now we're in the spinal cord, but the spinal cord and the brain have neurotransmitters that can actually go back down out that way, and kind of nip that in the bud a little bit, kind of smudge it out. And some of these are some of those, these are all internal. We have all of these internally. And you'll notice some of these are some of the medications that are out there and how they've been formulated to also mimic what's naturally in our body. So serotonin, GABA, opioids, dopamine, and endocannabinoids. So these are, some are made in the brain, some are made in the gut, like serotonin, about 98, 99% is made in the gut. And these can be used to modulate that. So, you know, you have something coming, you have a signal coming up that's like, and the output going out that's danger, danger, but maybe mom comes over and hugs you. Like picture the little kid that's kind of fallen down and scraped his knee, and you know, signals are going danger, danger. Mom comes over and gives you a hug. You're okay, everything's okay. Or maybe they laugh it off or say something funny and then you start laughing. And so now you've got these flooded opioids, GABA, dopamine, all these other things kind of dampening that. And so pretty soon you forget about the scrape on your knee. And that is how powerful our bodies are. We already have this stuff within us. And a lot of these come with getting good sleep, getting sunlight, balancing blood sugar. So making sure your blood sugar is not rising up and down during the day, but it feels pretty balanced. You have good energy throughout the day. From laughing, from feeling support, from feeling a sense of purpose. So they're kind of, some of them are the reward neurotransmitters like dopamine that feeds off feel-good things. So some of those might be things that we turn to that might not be so healthy, like drugs, medications, alcohol, which can be okay, maybe on a short term or depending on what you're using, right? I don't want to say all drugs are okay, but that some of these might be, you know, part of that reward system that's kind of dampening those signals. But again, we have all of these internally within us. We have the power within. Okay, so we'll talk about the sensitized alarm system. So this is pre-injury. You know, on the left here, tissue tolerance, or the amount of your tissues can tolerate before, you know, they're feeling any, or before there's damage. And then this is the stressor strength. So all of those nociceptors and their ability to, you know, sense mechanical, temperature, and chemical. And so now, you know, this is when you're feeling healthy and fine. And we get the tissue tolerance, you know, it's just like press, 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 press. And, you know, it takes a good amount of pressure before I start to feel discomfort. And at that point, you know, it's a little bit above the tissue damage. It's just like verging right on it. And at that point, you know, maybe I might break a few blood vessels. If I looked under there, there might be a bruise if I squeezed hard enough. So that's just a normal response, right? It happens at the same time that there's tissue damage. So as we go on with persistent pain, you've had it for a long time and you've got all these thoughts about it and memories about it, and you've tried this and that, and it's just not going away. So now what's going on, and I alluded to this before, that your mechanical, temperature, and chemical nociceptors are now just a little more sensitive. So it doesn't take quite as much pressure to feel that, oh, the alarm bells are going off, even when I even think about squeezing my arm maybe, or just laid the hand there, haven't even done anything. And so now I'm already feeling the alarm system. It's feeling pretty flared up, but the tissue damage hasn't even occurred yet. And what's more is that it doesn't take as much for the tissues to be damaged or to get into that state where they could potentially be damaged. And so now you've got a really sensitive nervous system that you might even just think about touching that arm, or you can picture somebody else touching your arm or your painful spots, and you feel the discomfort already starting up. So this is our move towards a hypersensitized nervous system. But the beautiful thing is that we can reverse that. We can reverse it. So these are all, I'm talking about, like, you know, ramping up, but we can I call it a downshift. We kind of downshift it back in. We can reformulate our nervous system to feel nourished and comfortable and safe again. And it happens internally in all of our tissues down to the physiology. But it starts, or it can be modulated by all the stuff that we can see, hear, smell, and think and do. So let's get into some of that. We are going to talk a little bit more about how it's hypersensitive and how the thoughts and everything else can lead into that. So this is the image of the hypersensitive, and then we'll go into the more homeostasis aspects of things. So here we are again, you feel there's some sensation, there's some output, and it's signaling it's signaling a danger. This is actually, I kind of think the arrow should almost be pointing up and down, because you got a sensation, it's going up the spinal cord, and your brain is going to put together all of these different, all the different information that it has. So it's going to check in with your hippocampus and your memory centers, your amygdala, your fear center, kind of that lizard brain that just thinks about survival. It's going to check in with your prefrontal cortex, which is going to talk up or think about, what do I need to do about this? It's going to want to analyze everything. And all these different areas that relate to emotion. And it's going to pass that through. And so some of that could be your relationships. So what's going on with your significant other or your work relationships, and how might that be also tied to this? Your thoughts from, your thoughts about this will never change, I'm not going to get better, this is getting worse, nothing can help me, no one can help me. Your emotions about that, thoughts about ending your life, or thoughts about just being sad and broken and emotionally withdrawn. Thoughts about your community and maybe being isolated socially because you're not going out and doing as much stuff. You feel limited in what you can do, and so you stop going out with your social relationships, or either work too. So maybe your work community is, there might be thoughts about like, oh, why is she missing work, or he's missing work again, feeling ostracized, and oh, it's awful. And then actual kind of threats, like you think about, well, I can't pick that box up, or I can't pick my kid up. How am I going to pick my kid up if I'm so in pain? I don't want to make dinner, my arms hurt too much. I don't want to do laundry or ride my bike. And so those become actual or thought of potential threats. So again, this is how, and these are all feedback loops, right? The emotions tie into this, and then you get the sensation of more excitation of these nociceptors, more sensitivity of the whole nervous system and how it actually transmits the neural pathways and the neurotransmitters. And so we end up with some of these things. More hormones are released. The muscles get weaker because you're not moving as much, et cetera, et cetera. And these are, again, feedback loops. So you could even think about your relationship with your spouse, and that will trigger it now because they're all so tied together. We talked about that signal in the beginning when the woman was listening for the phone, and now it's your relationship with your spouse, and that's triggering, all of this stuff again. So again, this is the hypersensitivity of it. This is neuroplasticity in a way that you maybe don't want it to go, but let's travel down the other way. There we go. Okay, so this is homeostasis. Release. So now you're starting to cope with those threats. Now you're seeing, well, you know what, if I ride my bike, it's not going to be any different than if I don't ride my bike. So I might as well just try to ride my bike. It's not increasing the pain anymore. I just got this fear about it, that it might increase my pain. Or, now I know how to pick up my kid properly without hurting my back. I can do this. Or I don't have to pick up my kid that way. I can do it a different way, or have somebody else do it. And reconnecting with your community, like, oh, maybe, my back doesn't feel that bad. I can still connect with and go have coffee with someone. That's okay. I can do that. So just a little bit of reintroduction of your body and your mind to the world again. Regulating the thoughts about your pain. So not, seeing your pain as a sensation and something that's telling you to change your position, or just changing the language about it versus, oh, it's always going to be here and I'm not be able to go do this and go do that, and there it is again. And the mind goes that way quick. I know it does. But you can start to reverse that. So, oh, it's just a sensation. Gosh, Tiana, just, breathe. Take yourself into that breath state. Let's practice that meditation. Let's do those few movements. And all of this starts to feed off of each other, because then your relationships improve too, right? Or maybe you've improved your relationships and that's helping your back pain, because maybe you were tensing up every time you thought you were going to get in an argument, or your boss was at work and maybe you just left your job because you just couldn't deal with that anymore. And so now you've left that situation, and lo and behold, your back pain is less because you're less in that agitated, protective state. You don't feel that way every time you're going to go to work, et cetera, et cetera. Again, it's complex, but fascinating and amazing and beautiful that we can find ways to modulate by so many different avenues. It's not just a pill, it's not just a healthy diet, it's not just drinking enough water, it's not just finding the right movement, it's about everything. It's about a little bit of everything and knowing what works for you. So this is our way back to homeostasis, and we'll carry on through how do we start to overcome this pain through some of the aspects of yoga. And yoga not being just the asana or the movements, but being a way of thinking, a way of living, and a way of processing all of this. So how do we begin? Here are the 5 steps of knowledge, which you've just entered into a little bit today, learning about pain science and learning about your own body in terms of the science of pain. Breath. So breath is so powerful in connecting with your parasympathetic nervous system and shifting you in towards that calming rest and digest state. It's so powerful that in a moment, like in the beginning of the practice, if you felt a shift in your sensations, it's that powerful and that quick. From having body awareness, or we call pratyahara, or interoception, practice. If you don't practice, if you don't try it, if you try it once and it doesn't work, that doesn't mean it doesn't work. It just means in that moment it didn't work, or maybe it wasn't the right practice. We gotta, it's called tapas, or the fire, the practice of doing and continuing to do, the patience that comes with that. And the practice has to be salient to you. It has to mean something to you. It has to be, you have to, I don't know, for some constitutions, we have to understand what that means or why we're doing it. And others are okay just going along with the practice and being, just accepting that that's what they'll do. And then we're going to explore something called DIMS and SIMS, which even expands this 5-part to a much more extensive ability to change the pain experience. So let's begin. We've already kind of delved into the to our knowledge base. So svadhyaya, or self-learning, which is a Sanskrit word. Vijnanamaya kosha, which is about our mental learning. Kosha, there's the part of us that wants to learn and be mentally aware and connected. And so you've just learned a little bit about the neuroscience and how pain helps us reduce or change that pain experience. So there's so much more to learn, and I do go into that into my longer program online. But you've gotten at least a little snippet of it, and there's so much more to learn and so much more to experience, and different stories and ways to learn. But that's at least part of it. So I'm hoping that you can at least grasp a little bit here. Knowing that the nervous system adapts and changes, and that the way that you feel right now does not have to be the way that you feel forever. And that in a moment, you can change. In a moment, your nervous system can feel different. If you've read my bio and my story about my pain story, you know that I had an experience that gave me hope. It was just a moment. I don't know how long we were in meditation practice. It was maybe 20 minutes. And it was a guided experience, and I was in a lot of pain going into it. And I came out of it, and I asked the instructor, what was that? I my pain is gone. And I knew in that moment that I was not broken, that my nervous system, my nerves couldn't possibly be damaged, that it couldn't be that I was broken or something was wrong with my neck or my arms were, the nerves in there were so irritated, because in that moment I didn't have any pain. And it lasted maybe, a little bit afterwards. It certainly came back. It was temporary, but it at least gave me a vision of hope that my nervous system could change, and I could move it in a different direction. And it's true. It can happen in a moment. And it doesn't take very long sometimes, but you have to keep practicing. You have to keep those practices up. So the best approach is always your lived experience. It's not going to be, I've taken people through pain education and practices, and sometimes it just doesn't stick right then. But you're planting the seeds, and along the way, someone somewhere is going to say something or take you through a practice, and you're just going to get it. Call it the aha moment. You're just going to get it. And in that moment, you'll notice, you'll feel it. Maybe you have no pain, maybe it comes back, but you'll at least have a glimmer of hope that takes you forward, because it is possible, but nobody else's experience is going to be like yours. You have to practice and try and attempt different things and believe that you can change. Believe it. And sometimes that only happens when you have the experience, the aha moment. Okay. Let's make sure that's the right one. Okay. So how do we move in the face of pain in terms of our yoga practice? We talk about kind of finding the edge. So, it doesn't just come with the movement, like, oh, all of a sudden I'm going to start practicing yoga and everything's going to be fine. I'm just going to find that edge, and when I feel it, I'm going to back off. It's like all of this other stuff has to happen too. You're practicing the breath, you're practicing maybe meditation practices, you're practicing the knowledge base of it and getting educated about you and how your pain and how your thoughts affect you. So now you've done all that and you're into the practice of maybe moving in an asana practice, and you go, is this safe? Am I going to be okay later? And sometimes you know, sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you're in the practice and maybe those top-down neurotransmitters, the opioids and the GABAs are all flowing, and you're like, oh, I feel good, I can do this. And you're going in a down dog and you're like, yes, I can do this. And then later you go home and you're like, oh, I did too much. Now I'm in pain again. And then you think it was because of the yoga practice and shouldn't have done that. And perhaps not. Perhaps you didn't see the signals or didn't quite feel the signals, or maybe they were there, but there was just so much top-down inhibitors that were flooding it. And hey, you had a positive experience in the moment, and that's what you have to hold on to. Not maybe the stuff that happened later, but the stuff within the practice, like, oh, I was able to move, I felt good, all of that was okay. My body was able to do it in that moment. And that's the stuff you got to hang on to for dear life. This other, yes, maybe you want to be cautious next time, but if you're too cautious, then you won't ever try those things again. And then you become fear-based about anything that might trigger it. So there's a balance, a very fine balance. So maybe next time you go, maybe I'm not going to hold it that long. Maybe I'm just going to hold it for a little bit. And maybe I'll try a few breaths and then I'll come down instead of avoiding it completely. Because sometimes it's hard to know, is it okay? Am I safe right now? Am I safe right now? Sometimes that can feel, you can tell that. Maybe you take a few breaths and you can go, yeah, I can do this, I'm okay. Will I feel okay later? It's a little bit harder sometimes to know. But again, I want you to hold on to the practice in the moment. And what might happen later doesn't always mean that what happened in the practice is the result of it. Who knows? You could have smelled something that shifted you. You could have had a thought that came in that shifted you. And it might not have been the movement practice. You might have gotten home and gone, yeah, shouldn't have done that. And now that whole thought train goes in, and now that's in your nervous system, and it's the one triggering you. So just want to say it's complex, but yeah, learning to move safely within some kind of practice is possible. It might not look like what you used to do, but it is possible to start to engage in your yoga practice again, if that's what you're looking for. All right. So the breath practices are pranayama, this energy movement through our breath, and we can shift our energy up and we can shift it down. So there's some practices that are used for balance, like alternate nostril breath. We can do that at the end, perhaps. Ujjayi breath, it's also thought to be balancing, a little bit energizing too sometimes, that kind of, we call the Darth Vader breath, that tightening of the back of the throat as you breathe out. There's calming breath, so Ida Nadi, which is that left side nostril breathing, 3-part breath, which is breathing in, allowing the belly to rise, the middle space, the heart space, so kind of breathing in, filling from the bottom up and then emptying from the top down. Elongated exhales are probably the most used and probably the simplest to facilitate or to do. So Dirga Richak, which are just a longer exhale than your inhale. Nothing hard about that in terms of engaging in the practice. Kapalabhati, or that skull shining breath, that can be either calming or energizing for some people and heating. On the energizing side, so maybe you're just so, you're just so low, just tired and can't, just the pain has gotten you down and you're not sleeping well. So these are some breath practices that might take you the opposite direction. Ujjayi, again, balancing but also energizing. Right-sided nostril breath, or Pingala, so just breathing in and out through the right nostril. And then again, as I mentioned, Kapalabhati can also be energizing. I feel it's, when I've done it, if you notice how you feel afterwards, which you should do with any of these breath practices, is to notice how you feel, because your nervous system doesn't really register all that unless you're paying attention. It has to be salient, meaningful, and it has to be something that you're actually taking in, like, oh, wow, I felt that way after that. I'm going to try that again. So that you know how to use it when you need to use it. So if you're feeling agitated and out of sorts, and you've practiced an alternate nostril breath a million times, you can go to that when you need to feel the sense of balance. But if you don't practice it, you never know, and you don't pay attention, you will never know how it makes you feel. You'll just kind of go through the process of the practice and then, okay, moving along. But if you did elongated exhales for, 5 minutes, notice how you feel afterwards. And gosh, I feel just calm, chill. My pain's actually less. That's the one you want to use. So I'm pretty sure I go through a lot of these in the full online program. And I think even in the free version, there's probably, I have a feeling there's alternate nostril breath. I can't tell you for sure. It's been a while since I made those. So, but I know we do go through breath practices for sure in the longer series. Okay. Oh, so I guess we're going to practice here. Okay. So, oops, let's go back. And let's just take a little pause right here. Not sure how. Okay, we're almost there. All right, so I am going to take you through a alternate nostril breath. Let's do that. So just for a moment, right here, right now, just feet on the floor, again, upright body. Take a scan of the body and just notice where you're sensing stuff without stories or judgments. You're gonna kind of pass through. I'm just gonna note where my stuff is. Okay, so we just got a mental inventory of just stuff going on in our body, and we're not going to talk about stories about it. We're just going to notice. And now the alternate nostril breath. So we take the dominant hand, and you're going to use thumb to close off your right nostril, and either the ring finger or the pinky to close off your left nostril. If your arm gets tired, you can always just make a little fist and plop that arm underneath there. You want to try to keep your head in steady position. So oftentimes we turn off to the side that our hand is, but you want to just keep the face central and neutral. And yeah, that's it. It's going to be more of a belly breath, not so much a chest breath. So keep it to the belly as you breathe in, belly gently expands as you breathe out, belly gently falls back towards home. Okay, so we will take a full breath in and out, and then we'll begin the practice. When you're ready to inhale, close off your right nostril, inhale through the left. Close off the left, exhale right. Inhale right when you're ready. Close off the right, exhale through the left. That's one round. I'll take us through one more round verbally, and then I'll leave you on your own to do it. Take a breath in, left. Close off the left, exhale right. Inhale right. Close off the right, exhale left. That's 2 rounds. Let's do one more on your own without me guiding you. When you're done with the next exhale through the left nostril, just let go of the practice and relax your arms down. And just take a few full breaths through both nostrils. Notice how you feel. And also take that quick body scan through and just notice those areas that you noted before and see if they've changed. Whether they're more sensitive, less sensitive, not even there. I can feel my original spaces are gone, but I have a new one that's arisen. And I think it's because I'm teaching and I was in a more upright kind of, alert position. So anyhow, in a moment, your body and your nervous system can change. And how powerful is that? Something so powerful as the breath. So when we do that breath practice, we're noticing, again, sensing a shift or not. Just be curious, like, oh, that's interesting. That was more pain, or there was less pain, or gosh, it's gone. So just always be open and curious. You might notice how your body moves on the inhale, how it moves on the exhale. That could even be just a practice. And then this fact of interoception, you're paying attention, you're noticing. And that interoception is the awareness of of the sensations in your body. So you might feel your heart beating rapidly. And for some, you might know that that just means you're getting, anxious about something or scared, or maybe you just ran and that's why, versus some people who might feel that and go, I think I'm having a heart attack, when that might not be the case. So heartbeat, breath awareness, sensations in the body, this is our interoception or interoceptive awareness. All right. So what if the body doesn't feel safe? And I kind of alluded to this in the idea of when we're moving and we don't feel safe. So you might try it in a different angle or a different range, a smaller range. So maybe, they're telling you to kind of swirl around and you immediately go to the furthest end of the range and you're going, God, oh, this hurts. Oh. But then you start to go, oh, okay, I can probably do a little bit less and it feels okay. Or maybe you're going less and you go, oh, maybe I think I can go a little bit more. So you just try the different ranges, different angles, and just see what happens. Be curious, stay open. What happens when I take a smoother, longer breath? Does it change the pain that I'm in? So I'm holding downward facing dog and I just take a deeper breath and let the shoulders drop out, relax my low back a little bit. Actually feels better. So, sometimes we're immediately just exiting out of something, or the the teacher says, just go to child's pose, or just don't do it if it hurts. But maybe in your mind, you're thinking, no, you know what, maybe I can stay here and take a breath and then I'll be okay. So it doesn't always have to be that fear response of like, retreat, get out of it, danger, danger. It's like, can I be open and curious about where I am right now and dampen my danger signals by just something that I can do internally, my thoughts and my breath. You can also imagine the movement. So I've done practices with people, an imaginary, and this is the practice actually that helped me, Indra Gokara Bhavana, an imagined movement, returning to my wrist-centered previous wellness state. This is what brought me into my hope when I felt no pain in my body. And you can do imagined movement. So maybe everybody else is doing downward dog, and perhaps you can try downward dog in your mind and practice it. And for some, that could even be triggering. Like I mentioned, I can think about my old computer station and just sitting there at my computer and on my phone and typing, and it brings on my stuff a little bit. So sometimes imagining movement can also be triggering too. So just be mindful of that. And it's helpful to work through with somebody in determining if that's the case and what to do about that. So it's a little bit longer step to go into than I have time for today. And, you know, sometimes today's not the day. How you slept, maybe what you ate, your digestion, what somebody said to you earlier, your state of mind. Maybe today's just not the day to challenge your system. Doesn't mean you don't ever have to do it or can't do it, but just, you know, there's a time and place for everything, a season. Okay, this last one, I think this is the last one. So this is something that I give to my clients often to help them determine other aspects of their life that might be triggers for their pain, that might not be physical at all, that might have nothing to do with tissue damage. Because Lord knows we can have tissue damage and have no pain, like a big bruise you got 3 hours ago and suddenly you're noticing it and going, when did that happen? Lots of tissue damage, no pain. Your nervous system did not think that bruise or that hit at the time was necessary to change your behavior. So it didn't. No danger, but gosh, there was tissue damage. So what happened? Sometimes the nervous system is not always accurate. Like the things that we see, sometimes not always accurate. But there is a way to start to shift that, and awareness of it is first. Okay, so the DIMs, the DIMs, are the dangers in me, and the SIMs on the right are the safeties in me. Everything down the middle are things that could be potentially aspects that could trigger your pain or take it to that more homeostatic state, less hypersensitive. So as I mentioned before, anything in our sensory perception, things we hear, see, smell, taste, and touch. Things you do, like the activities, things you say, things you believe or think you believe, the places that you go, the people in your life, and the things that might actually be happening in your body. So smell is something, you know, we know this powerful smell that's, you can smell something and gosh, you just remember that time like, ugh, or grandma's house, or like, ugh, that food that I ate that I ended up throwing up. Like that's powerful stuff, right? You can remember that. You smell a perfume and you're just like, why do I feel this way? And sometimes that's so internal that you don't even know. It's just below the conscious level, but your nervous system knows it. Yeah, so anything along those lines, right? Sometimes you can, right, seeing something, like you can see somebody else being hurt, maybe the way that you got hurt, and you start to cringe, like, and maybe you feel that same pain in your knee, like, oh, God, I had that soccer game, you know, ooh. So very powerful nervous system we have. So these, you know, these, as we go down here, I'm thinking of just examples of like maybe places you go. So on the left, hospitals can be a sense of danger for some, like you think you might go there and something bad is going to happen, or you're going to have surgery that's a traumatic experience in itself, or you're going to get news that something's bad, or the hospital can be a safe place. Like, I'm going to go there and be healed. I'm going to have this surgery and it's going to make me feel better. My doctors are taking care of me. So it can go both ways. I've also had patients kind of realize, like, every time I go to my grandmother's house, my pain gets more. And it had something to do with the memory of grandma and the pain that was surrounded by that. So just be open and curious and think outside the box. Think outside the box. I'm trying to think. So another thing that's starred down here is acute inflammation. And so on the dangers, acute inflammation can be a danger, right? Your ankle's swelling, it's getting bigger, it's purple, you can't feel your toes now. And so that can, signify a real danger in the system, and maybe something that truly does need to be taken care of. But on this other side, the safeties in me, acute inflammation is a really necessary process. If it didn't happen, you wouldn't have the healing process start. You need all of those inflammatory products to come in and signal the cascade to start the healing of the tissues. If that didn't happen, you wouldn't have the healing of the tissues. So it can be on both sides. So anyway, I would ask for you to explore these. I hand these out into my, I think they're in the program. They're in the program. So you'll have that if you access it. I can't remember if it's in the free one, but it's definitely in the full program. All right. So here we are. Yoga is the journey of the self through the self to the self. It's from the Bhagavad Gita. So we find a new awareness, something that we didn't quite see before, something that challenges us, challenges our perceptions. It challenges everything that we've been taught and told. And if you want to engage in the practice and shift yourself out of persistent pain, and even help yourself when you get acute pain, like a true injury where there's tissue damage, because it can work in all aspects. It does not have to just be persistent pain, but any kind of pain that you experience, then you do the work. You get the knowledge, you practice body awareness, breath, going into discovering what those triggers might be outside of the box, outside of anything physical. What else could there be in your world that might be part of your pain pathway, so that you can start to shift away from that hypersensitive dude that we saw up there to the homeostatic dude who's more conscious and calm and present in this moment. Even though he might still experience pain, he's not suffering. So I think that's all we have time for. I'd love to take you through a body scan, but I know that that's in the program, and if you have any questions, please reach out to me and let's chat. I'd love to get to know more about your pain story, because everybody's different. Yours is different than anybody else's in the whole wide world, and that's what makes us amazingly complex and wondrous systems to explore. So I wish you relief along this pain journey. Namaste.